Most people believe quitting work early is reckless, impossible, or reserved for the lucky few. But this book shatters that illusion completely. Quit Like a Millionaire reveals a quiet, uncomfortable truth. The system is designed to keep you working, not free you. You are taught to chase higher salaries, bigger houses, and endless promotions, yet somehow the finish line keeps moving further away. Christy Shin and Bryce Lung prove that freedom doesn't come from earning more. It comes from building a strategy so simple, so disciplined, and so emotionally unbreakable that work becomes optional. This isn't a story about overnight success or flashy wealth. It's about understanding risk the way the wealthy do, using fear as a tool instead of a prison, and realizing that the real danger isn't quitting too early. It's staying trapped for decades, believing security comes from a paycheck while your time silently disappears. This audiobook will force you to question everything you think you know about money, safety, and freedom. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because the truth is, most people aren't afraid of working. They're afraid of instability. They cling to jobs not because they love them, but because they've been taught that a paycheck equals safety. Quit Like a Millionaire dismantles this belief piece by piece, showing how dependence on a single income is actually the most fragile position of all. When your entire life rests on one employer, one industry, one economy, you're not secure. You're exposed. The authors reframe quitting not as an emotional decision, but as a calculated, data-driven move built on resilience, diversification, and cash flow that doesn't care whether you show up to an office or not. This book introduces a radical but logical idea. Instead of asking, "How long can I keep working?" you should be asking, "How soon can my money work without me?" Through real numbers, real mistakes, and real market chaos, it reveals why obsessing over job titles and promotions is a distraction from the only metric that matters: how many years of freedom your assets can buy. The listener begins to realize that retirement is not an age, it's a math problem. And once the math is solved, fear loses its power. As the story unfolds, the illusion of safe paths begins to collapse. Savings accounts feel safe, but silently lose to inflation. Pensions promise stability, but depend on institutions you don't control. Even home ownership, often sold as the ultimate security, can become a financial anchor instead of a shield. The book forces an uncomfortable question. If the traditional path was truly safe, why are so many people exhausted, anxious, and unable to stop working, even after decades of effort? This is where Quit Like a Millionaire separates itself from motivation and fantasy. It doesn't ask you to dream, it asks you to calculate. It replaces hope with strategy, hustle with patience, and fear with systems. By the time this audiobook moves forward, the listener no longer wonders if quitting is possible. The only question left is how long they're willing to keep trading their life for certainty that was never real to begin with. At this point, the listener starts to feel something unsettling. The fear they've been carrying for years was never about money. It was about control. Quit Like a Millionaire exposes how volatility is exaggerated to scare people into obedience, while long-term investing, when understood correctly, quietly rewards patience and discipline. Market crashes, job losses, recessions, these aren't signs to panic. They're stress tests that reveal whether your strategy is built on emotion or logic. The book teaches that volatility is not the enemy of freedom. Ignorance is. When you understand how cash flow, asset allocation, and withdrawal rates truly work, uncertainty stops being terrifying and starts becoming manageable. And then comes the most uncomfortable realization of all. Many people don't actually want freedom. They want the illusion of safety, a predictable routine, a familiar struggle, a boss to blame. This book challenges that mindset ruthlessly. It shows that quitting like a millionaire isn't about escaping work. It's about escaping dependency. It's about designing a life where your time is no longer held hostage by fear, where decisions aren't made out of desperation, and where money becomes a tool, not a leash. By now, the listener understands this audiobook isn't offering inspiration. It's offering an exit, quiet, calculated, and permanent, for anyone brave enough to stop following a path that was never designed to let them leave. Chapter 1. Quit Like a Millionaire, Redefining Risk, Fear, and Freedom. In Quit Like a Millionaire, Christy Shen and Bryce Lung begin with the truth most people avoid. Our fear of poverty is often stronger than our desire for freedom. This fear doesn't come from numbers. It comes from memory, uncertainty, and stories we were told growing up. For many, money was never about comfort. It was about survival. And when survival becomes the priority, safety starts to look like obedience. This is why people stay in jobs they hate, tolerate stress they don't need, and delay freedom they could actually afford. The authors challenge the most dangerous myth in modern finance, the idea that quitting work early is reckless. In reality, they argue, the riskiest move is depending on a single paycheck for decades. One employer, one economy, one stream of income, that isn't security, that's concentration risk. Quit Like a Millionaire reframes risk not as market ups and downs, but as fragility, the inability to adapt when life inevitably changes. Chapter 1 forces the listener to confront an uncomfortable shift in thinking. Stability does not come from permanence. It comes from flexibility. A job feels stable only because it's familiar, not because it's guaranteed. Companies collapse, industries disappear, skills become obsolete. Yet people trust employment more than diversified investments simply because it pays them regularly. This chapter explains why predictable income creates emotional comfort, but long-term financial independence requires emotional discipline, not comfort. The book then introduces a powerful mental reset. Wealth is not about how much you earn, but how long you can survive without earning at all. This single metric changes everything. Suddenly, saving becomes strategy. Investing becomes survival planning. And freedom stops being a fantasy tied to age. It becomes a timeline you can calculate. The listener begins to understand that retirement isn't an event at the end of life. It's a position of strength where work becomes optional, not necessary. By the end of Chapter 1, Quit Like a Millionaire has already done something dangerous. It has removed the excuse of ignorance. You no longer fear quitting because you don't know enough. You fear it because it's now clearly possible. And once that realization sets in, returning to blind routine becomes harder than moving forward. This chapter doesn't motivate, it destabilizes. It cracks the foundation of the traditional path and prepares the listener for the uncomfortable, logical, and liberating journey ahead. Chapter 1 goes deeper by confronting the lie most people build their entire lives around, that a high income automatically means safety. Quit Like a Millionaire makes it painfully clear that income is temporary, but expenses are permanent if left unchecked. A large paycheck can disappear overnight, but a lifestyle inflated to match it becomes a trap that tightens every year. The authors show how people earning more often feel poorer, not because they lack money, but because their freedom has quietly been traded for obligations they can't easily escape. This is where the book draws a sharp line between being wealthy and being free. Wealth, as defined here, isn't about luxury, it's about resilience. Can you survive a market crash, a job loss, a bad year? Chapter 1 reframes these scenarios not as worst-case nightmares, but as inevitabilities that must be planned for. Fear doesn't vanish by avoiding risk. It vanishes by understanding it. And once risk is understood, it becomes measurable, manageable, and surprisingly boring. Christy Shen's early life experience adds weight to this lesson, not as inspiration, but as perspective. Growing up with instability creates a deep awareness that nothing is guaranteed, not even the systems people trust blindly. This perspective becomes the backbone of the book's philosophy. If nothing is guaranteed, then true security must come from control, not promises. Control over spending, control over investments, control over how much time you can afford to lose without panicking. The chapter dismantles another sacred belief that cash is safe. Cash feels comforting because it doesn't fluctuate. But Chapter 1 explains how silent erosion works. Inflation doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scare you. It simply steals slowly year after year while doing nothing feels responsible. Quit Like a Millionaire challenges the listener to accept a difficult truth. Avoiding movement is not avoiding risk. It's choosing a risk that's harder to see. As Chapter 1 nears its close, the message becomes unavoidable. Fear is not eliminated by guarantees. It's eliminated by preparation. The authors don't ask you to gamble. They ask you to plan for reality. A reality where markets rise and fall, jobs come and go, and time only moves in one direction. The listener is left with a quiet but powerful realization. If quitting feels terrifying, it's not because it's impossible. It's because no one ever taught you how to build a life that doesn't collapse without a paycheck. And that is exactly what Quit Like a Millionaire promises to do, starting not with motivation, not with hype, but with a hard reset of how you define risk, security, and freedom itself. Chapter 2, The Fear of Market Chaos and the Illusion of Control. In Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 2 attacks one of the deepest fears holding people hostage to their jobs, the fear of the market. For most people, the stock market feels like chaos, unpredictable, dangerous, and controlled by forces they don't understand. This fear is carefully reinforced by headlines, crashes, and stories of people who lost everything. But the authors argue that this fear isn't accidental. It exists because volatility is misunderstood. When you don't understand how something works, randomness feels like danger. The book introduces a crucial mental shift. Volatility is not the same as risk. Volatility is movement. Risk is permanent loss. Markets move constantly, but historically, diversified markets recover again and again, while jobs, companies, and careers disappear permanently without warning. Chapter 2 forces the listener to confront a painful contradiction. People trust employers who can fire them overnight, yet distrust markets that have recovered from every crash over long periods of time. This chapter explains why market crashes feel catastrophic in the moment, but become irrelevant with time. Fear peaks at the worst possible moment, when prices are low and emotions are high. The authors show how panic selling turns temporary downturns into permanent damage, while patience quietly rewards those who stay invested. The market doesn't punish volatility. It punishes emotional decisions. And most people don't fail financially because of bad math. They fail because fear overrides logic at exactly the wrong time. Chapter 2 also dismantles the myth that timing the market is protection. Trying to jump in and out feels like control, but it usually leads to missed recoveries and long-term underperformance. Quit Like a Millionaire emphasizes that simplicity beats cleverness. A boring, diversified strategy executed consistently outperforms complex strategies fueled by anxiety. Wealth isn't built by predicting the future, it's built by surviving uncertainty. The authors then introduce a powerful realization. Market crashes are not interruptions to the plan, they are part of the plan. Crashes create opportunity, not disaster, for those who are prepared. Someone who depends on a paycheck fears downturns because income is fragile. Someone who depends on assets understands downturns because their strategy accounts for them. The difference is preparation, not intelligence. As Chapter 2 closes, the listener begins to feel the fear loosen its grip. The market stops looking like a monster and starts looking like a machine, unemotional, indifferent, and predictable over time. The book makes one thing clear. Quitting work doesn't require avoiding risk. It requires choosing the right risks. And compared to trusting your entire future to a single employer, market volatility, when understood, is not the enemy. It's the cost of freedom. Chapter 2 moves from theory into survival thinking. Quit Like a Millionaire explains that the reason market fear feels so paralyzing is because most people imagine investing as an all-or-nothing bet. Either you're in and exposed to disaster, or you're out and safe. But this binary thinking is exactly what keeps people stuck. The authors introduce a more mature framework. Investing is not about avoiding downturns. It's about designing a system that can function during them. When you stop asking, what if the market crashes? And start asking, what happens to my plan when it does? Fear loses its emotional edge. This chapter emphasizes the importance of structure over prediction. Instead of relying on optimism, the strategy assumes bad years will happen and prepares for them in advance. Cash buffers, diversified asset allocation, and conservative withdrawal rules aren't signs of weakness. They are shock absorbers. They exist so you don't have to sell assets when prices are low, panic when headlines are loud, or abandon the plan at the worst possible moment. The book makes it clear. Freedom doesn't come from bravery. It comes from planning for your own fear. Chapter 2 also reframes what losing money actually means. Temporary drops feel like losses only if you're forced to sell. If your expenses are covered and your system is intact, volatility is just noise. The authors challenge the listener to see portfolios not as numbers on a screen, but as engines designed to last decades. Engines don't fail because of bumps. They fail because of neglect, overconfidence, or emotional misuse. Another uncomfortable truth surfaces here. People often fear the market because it exposes their lack of patience, the desire to constantly check balances, react to news, and intervene creates anxiety, not safety. Quit Like a Millionaire argues that doing less trading, less reacting, less guessing, is often the most intelligent move. The market rewards those who can stay still while others panic. And staying still is not passive. It's disciplined. As the chapter deepens, the listener begins to see why traditional, safe advice falls short. Advice that focuses only on avoiding risk ignores the bigger danger, running out of time. Staying in cash too long feels responsible, but it quietly extends dependence on work. Chapter 2 presses this point gently but firmly. Safety that delays freedom is not safety at all. It's comfort disguised as caution. By the end of Chapter 2, the message is unmistakable. Market chaos is not a flaw in the system. It's the price of long-term growth. Those who understand this build systems that absorb shocks and continue forward. Those who don't remain trapped, waiting for certainty that never arrives. Quit Like a Millionaire leaves the listener with a calmer, more dangerous understanding. You don't need the market to be predictable. You need your strategy to be resilient. Chapter 3 Surviving the Worst Years Without Going Back to Work. In Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 3 addresses the question that keeps people awake at night. What if everything goes wrong after I quit? What if the market crashes early? What if returns are lower than expected? What if this was a mistake? Instead of dismissing these fears, the authors do something rare. They design the entire strategy around them. This chapter makes it clear that financial independence doesn't come from assuming good luck. It comes from surviving bad timing. The concept introduced here is brutally simple. The biggest threat to freedom is not low returns. It's being forced to sell during bad years. This is known as sequence risk, and it's the silent killer of early retirement plans. A market crash at the beginning of independence can permanently damage a portfolio if withdrawals are handled emotionally or carelessly. Chapter 3 reframes the goal entirely. The objective isn't to maximize growth, it's to avoid irreversible damage when conditions are worst. To solve this, Quit Like a Millionaire introduces the idea of defensive layers. Cash is no longer treated as an investment. It becomes insurance. A dedicated cash buffer exists for one purpose only: to cover living expenses during downturns so assets can recover untouched. This buffer isn't there to make money. It's there to buy time. And time in volatile markets is the most valuable asset of all. The chapter then explains withdrawal discipline, not as a rigid rule, but as a flexible response system. Instead of blindly withdrawing the same amount, regardless of market conditions, the strategy adjusts spending during bad years. This isn't deprivation, it's control. Small, temporary reductions in spending during downturns dramatically increase the survival rate of the entire plan. Chapter 3 makes a powerful point. Freedom doesn't require luxury. It requires adaptability. Another critical idea emerges here. Independence is psychological before it's financial. People fail not because their numbers were wrong, but because they couldn't emotionally tolerate seeing their portfolio fluctuate while no paycheck arrived. This chapter teaches the listener how to emotionally separate market value from life security. When expenses are covered, buffers are in place, and rules are defined in advance. Volatility loses its power to trigger panic. As Chapter 3 unfolds, the listener realizes something quietly reassuring. The plan doesn't demand perfect behavior. It anticipates fear. It assumes doubt. It prepares for regret. Instead of pretending those emotions won't appear, it neutralizes them with structure. That is the real genius of the system described in Quit Like a Millionaire. It doesn't rely on confidence. It survives insecurity. By the end of Chapter 3, the fear of having to go back begins to fade, not because the future is predictable, but because the plan is resilient. The listener understands that quitting isn't a leap of faith. It's a controlled descent with multiple safety nets. And once you know you can survive the worst years without panic, the idea of permanent freedom stops feeling reckless and starts feeling inevitable. Chapter 3 goes deeper into why most early retirement plans fail. Not because the math is wrong, but because people underestimate stress. Seeing your portfolio drop while you're no longer earning feels very different from seeing the same drop while a paycheck is still coming in. Quit Like a Millionaire explains that this psychological shock is what pushes people to abandon good strategies at the worst possible time. The solution isn't optimism, it's designing a plan that assumes you will feel afraid and gives you permission to do nothing. The authors emphasize that flexibility is a form of strength, not weakness. During down markets, the plan allows for spending adjustments, not as punishment, but as protection. Even small changes temporarily reducing discretionary expenses can dramatically increase the longevity of a portfolio. Chapter 3 makes an important point here. Freedom is not about maintaining the same lifestyle forever. It's about maintaining control when conditions change. Another layer of defense is introduced: diversification across time, not just assets. Withdrawals are spread thoughtfully so that no single bad year defines the outcome. The chapter explains that markets rarely stay down forever, but portfolios can be destroyed quickly if withdrawals are mistimed. By spacing risk across years and using cash strategically, the system gives recovery room to do its job. The chapter also challenges a dangerous emotional trap: constantly calculating what could have been. Comparing current portfolio values to past highs creates regret, and regret creates panic. Quit Like a Millionaire advises detachment. Your portfolio is not a scoreboard. It's a machine designed to fund life over decades. Machines don't need encouragement. They need proper use. Checking less, reacting less, and trusting predefined rules becomes a form of emotional self-defense. As Chapter 3 nears its conclusion, the message becomes quietly empowering. Independence doesn't require courage every day. It requires structure once. Once rules are defined in advance, decision-making disappears. There is no daily debate, no constant fear, no emotional bargaining. The system absorbs shocks so you don't have to. By the end of Chapter 3, the listener understands something essential. The plan is not fragile. It bends without breaking. Bad years don't end freedom. They test discipline. And discipline, when built into the system rather than demanded from emotion, turns fear into just another temporary condition. Quit Like a Millionaire leaves you with a powerful realization. You don't need perfect markets to stay free. You need a plan that survives imperfect ones. Chapter 4: Spending, Happiness, and the True Cost of Freedom. In Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 4 shifts from preparation to lifestyle, asking the question that most people never consider. Does more money actually buy more freedom? Most financial advice assumes that accumulating wealth is enough. Save more, invest more, earn more. But the authors show that freedom is not a function of how much you earn. It's a function of how much control you have over your time, your choices, and your mind. Money is a tool, not a destination. The chapter opens with a striking truth. Spending patterns define your independence more than income ever will. A person with modest earnings but disciplined spending can achieve freedom faster than someone earning a fortune but living paycheck to paycheck. Quit Like a Millionaire emphasizes that the first step to quitting isn't investing more. It's understanding your true cost of living. Knowing exactly how much you need to survive and thrive creates clarity that no paycheck ever could. Chapter 4 then explores the psychological traps of lifestyle inflation. When income rises, most people immediately raise spending to match, often unconsciously. Bigger homes, new cars, expensive vacations. Each choice feels justified, even necessary. But in reality, it silently extends dependence on work. The authors argue that wealth is wasted if it fuels obligations instead of freedom. True financial independence requires restraint, planning, and deliberate decisions about what really matters. Another powerful lesson emerges. Happiness is not proportional to consumption. The book draws on research showing that once basic needs are comfortably met, additional spending contributes very little to well-being. The most meaningful investments aren't luxury items. They're experiences, relationships, and security. Quit Like a Millionaire reframes lifestyle choices as tools for freedom. Every dollar spent should either buy happiness today or preserve independence tomorrow. The chapter also confronts a subtle danger, fear, disguised as frugality. Cutting costs blindly without purpose can feel safe, but it can also create misery. Discipline, the authors stress, is not deprivation, it's prioritization. Freedom comes from knowing what matters, removing the unnecessary, and aligning spending with long-term goals. Chapter 4 makes it clear that financial independence is less about accumulation and more about deliberate alignment of resources with your life's priorities. As the chapter closes, the listener begins to see the pattern. Quitting work isn't just math, it's psychology. It's not just about surviving market crashes or calculating withdrawals. It's about aligning your lifestyle so that money serves your life, not the other way around. In Quit Like a Millionaire, financial independence isn't a dream. It's a carefully constructed reality, built on discipline, clarity, and the courage to live on your own terms. Chapter 4 goes further into the tension between desire and discipline. Quit Like a Millionaire explains that most people confuse comfort with freedom. A bigger house feels safe. A luxury car feels secure. A new gadget feels necessary. But these comforts silently extend dependence on work. Every extra dollar spent today is a future paycheck you'll have to earn. The authors are blunt. Without awareness, lifestyle inflation can turn independence into an illusion. You may feel rich, but you are still trapped, trading time for money year after year. The book introduces a radical perspective. Control over spending is more powerful than control over income. The fewer resources you tie to obligations, the faster you can quit. This is where lean freedom becomes a strategy, not deprivation. The chapter guides the listener to think in terms of freedom dollars, money spent only when it increases happiness or preserves independence. Every unnecessary purchase is reframed as delayed freedom. Another key insight emerges. Happiness is deeply connected to intentionality. Spending without thought creates a short-term buzz but long-term stress. The authors argue that the mindset of "I need more to be happy" is a trap, a system designed to keep people working longer than necessary. True freedom comes when every dollar, every hour, every decision aligns with purpose. The chapter makes the listener confront a hard question. Are you spending your money, or is your money quietly spending your life? Chapter 4 also highlights the emotional side of cutting costs. Discipline isn't painless. It requires saying no to impulses, social pressure, and societal expectations. But the reward is profound. Control, clarity, and the ability to quit work on your terms. The authors stress that financial independence is less about extreme frugality and more about thoughtful prioritization. It's a mindset, a deliberate alignment of spending, saving, and investing with what truly matters. By the end of Chapter 4, the listener understands a powerful truth. Quitting work early is not just about numbers, it's about choices. Discipline is not punishment. Spending is not indulgence. Money is not a scoreboard. Freedom is earned by aligning all three. And in Quit Like a Millionaire, this alignment is presented not as theory, but as a step-by-step, emotionally intelligent roadmap. Chapter 5. Investing for Freedom. Building a portfolio that works without you. In Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 5 dives into the heart of financial independence. Investing. Most people treat investing like a guessing game, hoping for the highest returns while avoiding risk at all costs. But the authors argue that true investing for freedom is neither about luck nor short-term speculation. It's about designing a system that generates consistent, reliable, and stress-tested returns over decades. The first principle introduced is diversification, not as a buzzword but as a survival strategy. By spreading money across stocks, bonds, and other asset classes, you reduce the risk that a single downturn destroys your plan. The book emphasizes that volatility is unavoidable, but catastrophic loss is optional. A well-diversified portfolio is built to absorb shocks, recover from crashes, and keep delivering cash flow, even when the world seems chaotic. Chapter 5 then explains the difference between risk and volatility, reinforcing lessons from the Chapter 2. Volatility, the ups and downs of the market, is not your enemy. Your enemy is forced selling during down years. The authors present a clear strategy: safe withdrawal rates, cash buffers, and conservative projections. By withdrawing only what your system can handle, you ensure the portfolio lasts decades, even through severe market downturns. The book provides practical numbers, how much to allocate to equities, bonds, and cash based on your goals, risk tolerance, and timeline. The authors emphasize simplicity over complexity. You don't need to chase the next hot stock or time the market perfectly. A straightforward, disciplined, and diversified portfolio, combined with a well-planned withdrawal strategy, is sufficient to generate permanent freedom. Chapter 6. Retirement. Math, safe withdrawals, and preparing for life. Without paychecks, in Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 6 tackles the question that haunts everyone considering early freedom. How much can I safely withdraw without running out of money? Most financial advice simplifies retirement into a single number, but the authors reveal a far more nuanced reality. Financial independence is not just about accumulating wealth. It's about understanding how long it lasts under stress, uncertainty, and human emotion. The chapter begins with the concept of the safe withdrawal rate. This is the percentage of your portfolio you can remove each year without risking depletion, even during market downturns. The authors break it down clearly. Withdrawing too much too soon is the fastest way to destroy freedom. Conversely, conservative, disciplined withdrawals protect both your portfolio and your peace of mind. The math is simple, but the psychology is complex. Following the rules consistently, especially during bad years, is the real challenge. Chapter 6 then introduces a critical tool: cash wedges. These are dedicated reserves set aside to cover expenses for several years in advance. By having a buffer, You remove the pressure to sell investments during downturns, which is the single most common way early retirees fail. Cash wedges aren't about maximizing returns. They're about preserving options, maintaining control, and surviving worst-case scenarios without panic. Another key lesson in this chapter is the psychological preparation for quitting work. Quit Like a Millionaire emphasizes that money alone does not eliminate fear. Even with perfect numbers, the first months of freedom can trigger doubt, anxiety, and uncertainty. The authors guide the listener through mindset strategies, detaching identity from work, separating market fluctuations from life security, and embracing the deliberate choice of living on your terms. Financial independence is as much emotional discipline as it is math. The chapter also addresses flexibility. Withdrawal rates are not rigid rules, but adaptable guidelines. Reducing spending slightly in a bad year or delaying discretionary expenses is not deprivation. It's risk management. The system accounts for human behavior, recognizing that emotions often sabotage even the best plans. The combination of math, buffers, and mindset creates a structure where freedom is sustainable and resilient, even in the face of uncertainty. By the end of Chapter 6, the listener realizes a powerful truth. Quitting is not reckless. It is calculated. The numbers are not guesses. They are tested strategies designed to survive the worst-case scenarios. And more importantly, early freedom is not about luck. It is about preparation, discipline, and mastering the uncomfortable intersection of money and psychology. In Quit Like a Millionaire, the listener understands that the plan doesn't promise perfection. It promises survival, independence, and the ability to truly live life on your own terms. Chapter 6 goes even deeper into the realities of early retirement by addressing the unpredictable nature of life itself. The authors remind the listener that numbers on a spreadsheet are only part of the story. Real life includes emergencies, unexpected expenses, and sudden changes. Quit Like a Millionaire emphasizes that a robust plan isn't about predicting the future perfectly. It's about building a system that survives when reality deviates from expectation. This is where preparation becomes power. The book explores worst-case scenarios in depth. Market crashes, medical emergencies, and life changes that could otherwise force someone back to work. By using conservative withdrawal rates combined with cash wedges, the plan creates breathing room. Even if the market loses 30% in a single year, your lifestyle doesn't have to collapse. You don't have to panic. You don't have to sell. And most importantly, you don't have to return to a job you've left behind. Chapter 6 also highlights the psychological trap of overconfidence. Many early retirees assume that because the math looks good today, it will always be sufficient. The authors caution against this mindset. Financial independence is a living system, not a static number. Checking balances obsessively, reacting emotionally to fluctuations, or underestimating future costs can silently erode years of planning. Discipline and patience, not luck or perfect timing, are what sustain freedom. Another critical lesson emerges. Freedom is reinforced by flexibility, not rigidity. The book shows how small adjustments in spending, lifestyle, or timing can have outsized effects on long-term sustainability. This isn't deprivation, it's resilience. By planning for contingencies and accepting that life will not go perfectly according to plan, early retirees can maintain independence without fear. As the chapter nears its close, the listener begins to internalize a profound truth. Quitting work early isn't about escaping risk, it's about managing it intelligently. Quit Like a Millionaire demonstrates that when math, buffers, and mindset are aligned, freedom is no longer a gamble. It is the natural outcome of preparation, discipline, and understanding both numbers and human behavior. By the end of Chapter 6, the listener is ready to take the next step. Not only understanding the numbers that make quitting possible, but also embracing the psychological mastery needed to live those numbers fully, confidently, and without fear. The foundation is now laid for the chapters ahead, where implementation, lifestyle design, and long-term strategy take center stage. Chapter 7, Making It Real: Taxes, Lifestyle Tweaks, and Maximizing Early Freedom. In Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 7 transitions from theory to action. Numbers alone don't create freedom, implementation does. The authors stress that achieving early retirement isn't just about saving and investing, it's about structuring your life so every dollar, every decision, and every move works toward independence. Small tweaks now can compound into decades of stress-free time later. The chapter opens with the often overlooked reality of taxes. Christy Sheehan and Bryce Lung show how tax efficiency can dramatically impact the longevity of your portfolio. Investments grow faster, withdrawals last longer, and freedom comes sooner when you understand which accounts to use, when to withdraw, and how to minimize penalties. Taxes are not just an annoyance. They're a key lever in designing sustainable independence. Next, the book examines lifestyle adjustments. The authors are blunt. Freedom doesn't require austerity, but it does require alignment. Every recurring expense, from rent to subscriptions to discretionary spending, is analyzed through one lens. Does this bring happiness today or preserve freedom tomorrow? They stress that intentional, strategic spending creates leverage. Unintentional spending creates invisible chains. By understanding and optimizing these patterns, you can often reduce required withdrawals without feeling deprived, giving your portfolio more room to grow and last. Chapter 7 also introduces the idea of freedom efficiency. This is the practice of maximizing happiness per dollar spent while minimizing dependence on work. Simple lifestyle changes, living slightly below your means, reducing unnecessary complexity, and prioritizing experiences over possessions, multiply the impact of your financial plan. The book emphasizes that these choices aren't about sacrifice. They're about reclaiming time and control. The chapter doesn't shy away from psychological realities. Leaving a job early can trigger social pressure, self-doubt, and even guilt. Friends, family, or society may question your choices. Quit Like a Millionaire advises preparing for this resistance by reinforcing clarity around your goals and understanding that freedom is personal. The plan is not about impressing others. It's about creating a life that aligns with your values and priorities. As Chapter 7 closes, the listener begins to feel the power of execution. Theory has been laid. Calculations have been explained. Now comes action. Applying tax strategies, adjusting lifestyle intentionally, and building freedom into daily decisions. This chapter makes it clear that early retirement is not a dream. It's a process, one that rewards discipline, awareness, and thoughtful implementation. By the end, the listener is not just imagining quitting. They are mentally stepping into it. Every number, buffer, and strategy now has purpose. Every expense, every tax move, every lifestyle adjustment is a lever pulled toward permanent freedom. And once action replaces theory, early retirement stops being hypothetical and starts becoming inevitable. Next, the book explores the fear trap. Even with perfect numbers, it is natural to feel anxious about markets, expenses, or unexpected emergencies. Quit Like a Millionaire reframes fear as data, not emotion. Fear signals that preparation is needed, not that quitting was a mistake. By following a structured plan with buffers, safe withdrawal rates, and conservative projections, the listener can neutralize panic before it becomes destructive. Another psychological hurdle addressed is the comparison trap. Observing peers still climbing corporate ladders, earning bonuses, or flaunting lifestyles can create doubt or jealousy. The authors remind the listener that freedom is deeply personal. Comparing your path to others is irrelevant. Your success is measured by control over your own life, not by societal benchmarks. Chapter 8 also introduces the importance of continuous review and adaptation. Freedom is dynamic, not static. Life circumstances change. Unexpected expenses arise. Personal priorities shift, or market conditions fluctuate. The key is not to predict every future outcome, but to maintain awareness, reassess periodically, and adjust actions without fear. This flexibility is what allows independence to be sustained for decades, not just a few years. As the chapter closes, the listener realizes a profound insight. Financial independence is both a technical system and a mental discipline. The numbers give freedom, but mindset preserves it. Without emotional mastery, even a perfect plan can feel precarious. Quit Like a Millionaire teaches that the ultimate goal isn't just leaving work, it's living without the constant anxiety that kept you tied to it. The chapter leaves the listener equipped not only with strategy, but with confidence to trust their plan and embrace true, lasting freedom. Chapter 9. Living the Life You Quit For in Quit Like a Millionaire, Chapter 9 answers the question that quietly sits beneath every calculation and strategy. What happens after you quit? Because financial independence is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a different kind of life. This chapter shifts the focus away from money and toward meaning, fulfillment, and intentional living once work is no longer a requirement. The authors begin by dismantling a common fear that life without work will feel empty or directionless. In reality, most people are not tired of being productive. They are tired of being controlled. Chapter 9 explains that when time is no longer sold to survive, creativity, curiosity, and purpose naturally resurface. Freedom doesn't remove structure. It allows you to choose it. The chapter introduces the idea of active freedom. Quitting work doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing what matters without financial pressure. Whether it's travel, learning new skills, volunteering, spending time with family, or building passion projects, independence creates space for intentional living. Quit Like a Millionaire emphasizes that fulfillment comes from engagement, not consumption. Another important theme in this chapter is rhythm. Without a job dictating schedules, many new retirees struggle initially with time management. The authors suggest creating personal rhythms, daily routines, long-term goals, and flexible structures that provide balance without obligation. Freedom thrives when paired with purpose. Without it, even independence can feel overwhelming. Chapter 9 also revisits spending through a new lens. Once free, money becomes a servant instead of a master. Expenses are no longer justified by stress or exhaustion, but evaluated by joy and value. The listener learns that financial independence allows spending to be intentional, guilt-free, and aligned with life goals. As the chapter deepens, the authors reflect on the ultimate reward of quitting like a millionaire: optionality. The ability to say no, the ability to walk away, the ability to choose work, projects, or commitments because you want to, not because you need to. This optionality is the true dividend of financial independence, and it compounds emotionally just as investments compound financially. By the end of Chapter 9, the listener understands that Quit Like a Millionaire was never just about quitting a job. It was about reclaiming life. The math built the bridge, the mindset kept it stable, and now freedom allows you to cross it fully. What you do on the other side is personal, but the power to choose is permanent. Quitting was never the goal. Freedom was. Quit Like a Millionaire ends where most financial advice never begins, with truth, not optimism, not hype, truth. The truth that working forever was never a virtue, that suffering through stress was never security, and that trading your life for a paycheck was never the only option. This book doesn't promise easy money or a perfect future. It offers something far more powerful: understanding. By now, the listener has seen through the illusion that jobs are safe, that markets are dangerous, that quitting is reckless, that freedom is reserved for the lucky. What Christy Shin and Bryce Lung reveal, quietly and relentlessly, is that dependence is the real risk, and preparation is the antidote. When your expenses are controlled, your investments are diversified, your withdrawals are disciplined, and your mindset is grounded, fear loses its authority. This audiobook was not about becoming rich. It was about becoming unbreakable, about building a system that survives crashes, panic, doubt, and time itself. A system that does not ask for courage every day, but only discipline once. A system where money becomes boring, predictable, and obedient, so your life can be anything but. Quitting, as this book shows, is not an escape. It's a decision to stop delaying life, to stop waiting for permission, to stop believing that exhaustion equals success. When work becomes optional, every choice becomes intentional, and that is the quiet power most people never reach. If this book has done its job, you no longer ask, "Can I quit?" You ask, "Why am I still waiting?" Because freedom does not arrive with age. It arrives with clarity. And now you have it. Freedom is not loud. It doesn't announce itself with promotions, applause, or approval. It arrives quietly, the moment you realize you no longer need to explain your life to anyone. Quit Like a Millionaire shows that the richest people aren't those with the most money, but those with the fewest obligations. When your expenses are low, your plan is resilient, and your fear is understood, the world loses its power over you. This journey was never about escaping responsibility. It was about choosing the right ones. Responsibility to your time, responsibility to your mental health, responsibility to the years you will never get back. The book makes something painfully clear. Most people don't fail financially. They fail to question the path they're on. They keep going, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. And familiarity, disguised as safety, becomes a lifetime sentence. Now, you understand the difference. You understand that markets move, jobs disappear, and certainty is an illusion. But preparation is real. You understand that fear doesn't mean stop. It means plan better. You understand that quitting isn't weakness. It's clarity. And clarity is dangerous Because once you have it, you can't pretend anymore. If you continue working, it will now be by choice. If you continue saving, it will be with purpose. If you continue investing, it will be with patience. And if you quit, you will quit like a millionaire, not because you chased wealth, but because you mastered freedom. This audiobook doesn't end with motivation, it ends with responsibility. The responsibility to decide what your life is worth and how long you're willing to trade it away. The rest is up to you. And as the silence settles, one last realization remains. No one is coming to save you. No raise will suddenly buy back your time. No promotion will return the years spent exhausted. This book never promised certainty, because certainty doesn't exist. What it offered instead was something far more realistic. Control. Control over how long you must work. Control over how much fear you allow. Control over when enough finally becomes enough. Most people will close this audiobook and go back to routine. Not because they didn't understand, but because understanding demands responsibility. Freedom asks you to act without applause, without validation, without permission. And that is why so few people ever claim it, not because it's impossible, but because it's quiet, disciplined, and lonely at first. But if you listen carefully, you now know this. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more income. You don't need perfect timing. You need alignment between your spending and your values, between your fear and your plan, between the life you're living and the life you refuse to postpone any longer. Quit Like a Millionaire was never about quitting a job. It was about quitting the lie that this is the only way to live. And once that lie is gone, there is no dramatic ending, no fireworks, no finish line, just a calm, dangerous freedom, where your time finally belongs to you.